Shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Stay tuned near the end to hear more about that great sponsor. Following the overnight launch and success of the more arena-focused battle royale shooter Apex Legends in 2019, another title would be erected to follow the same success. This battle royale would be developed by Ubisoft Montreal, the studio behind the Assassin's Creed series, For Honor, and Rainbow Six, looking to join the BR craze, albeit slightly late. Dubbed Hyperscape and launched in 2020, it was complete with unique and novel features such as Twitch integration, a unique death mechanic, as well as lightning-fast movement, and a technical mastery not yet seen in a BR before. Hyperscape was able to chart quite quickly on Twitch viewership charts and strike up an impressive player count, but was unable to maintain the success, and after merely half a year, Ubisoft was already calling the title a failure themselves. Now it's November 2021 and Hyperscape hasn't received an update or any communication in over 7 months, which doesn't spell well for the game's future. What went wrong with Ubisoft's once-star Twitch BR shooter Hyperscape? How did the game fail to garner a player base for a consistent amount of time after only barely over a year? On this episode of Death of a Game, we open another case from the pile of battle royales, this time one backed by a AAA developer. Whether you win the battle royale yourself or become an echo, come along. We have a mystery to solve, detectives. The story of Hyperscape starts back on June 2nd of 2020, the same day the game was unveiled to the public. It was also released in a technical test not unlike the BR competitor Apex Legends succeeded at with a secret launch of their own. Meant to garner hype and excitement overnight, the test succeeded at garnering attention, but was limited to only a PC release at the time of the technical test. This already was a contrast between other BR titles, who were able to launch on other platforms simultaneously even if it was just a technical test. It seemed to turn off the console audience right away, as they would have to wait until launch, which technically gave the PC players a bit of an unfair advantage. Hyperscape, though, was a battle royale capable of up to 100 players spawned in a zone dubbed Neo Arcadia, which was part of a metaverse world. You would traverse this world, which was primarily interiors or the tops of buildings and such, and you tried to be the last one standing at the end ultimately, using your weapons and various abilities or hacks to assist at such. Those are some of the more typical industry standard mechanics present in Hyperscape as a battle royale, but the movement, although you can say Apex Legends has similar movement, was also unique in Hyperscape. The best way to describe it was Quake-like. If anything, it kind of reminds me of another shooter that we covered on this series, Lawbreakers if Lawbreakers was a battle royale. You can close large distances and make stunning gap-closing jumps. This gives the game a lot more verticality, which arena shooters like Quake and Halo are more used to. Even if it mimics several known and true BR mechanics, this would make Hyperscape unique as a BR. Forbes and PC Games In praised the new unique features the next Ubisoft Battle Royale, Hyperscape, would contain. The map sectors would begin to disintegrate in Hyperscape, delivering a unique approach to the whole idea of driving the action to the center. Typically it was gas, whereas in Hyperscape it was more losing entire sectors or zones. Top that off with the fact that at the end of the game, a crown would spawn and if you held it long enough, you would actually just win the game. Another unique mechanic of Hyperscape was how combat and looting functioned, which took the typical concept of running around for armor and weapons and simplified it in some ways by allowing you to pick up your same weapon to upgrade it up to 5 different times. You were also allowed up to 2 different weapons, and on each of these allowed 2 different hacks, or ability power-ups if you want to call them that, such as invisibility, a mine, or even transforming yourself into a giant bouncy ball. According to Forbes, the Echo concept in Hyperscape was the most distinctive of the features, as it allowed you to ping foes for your friends and assist them to be found while you were a dead player, so you couldn't necessarily fight, but you could still participate in the fights. With Twitch integration, players could vote on the power-ups for certain matches and have Twitch drops. Hyperscape was growing to be more than just another BR. With the backing of Ubisoft too, it had the ability theoretically to dwarf the other smaller titles in the space and grab some of the market share from some of the bigger players. With Hyperscape's open beta set to expire August 2nd, the launch was announced shortly after, August 11th, 2020. With it would launch the Season 1 Game Pass with the usual unlockable content and such. While the hype for Hyperscape during beta wasn't blowing any doors off, it was impressing some critics, although with some interesting explanations of such. Quake meets Fortnite, for example. Hyperscape would go on to launch on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation simultaneously, August 11th, 2020, showcasing its unique arena-style movement, new bells and whistles unique to the VR world, and more. And then face immediate issues regarding popularity and just general reception. Launching on console platforms for the first time but showcasing poorer than before Twitch viewership numbers wasn't a good sign for an early launch title. Hitting 11,000 viewers, meanwhile during the test you had up to 240,000 followers? Yeah, not a good ratio. There weren't any metrics besides this to track the success for Hyperscape, so the closest thing we could do is find the evidence that they had charted on a frequently most downloaded list when compared to their competition. But that's not surprising when they're kind of the newer game, so of course they're going to be getting downloaded more. Really, the lack of any proof of any major success for Hyperscape I'll bet confirms the game's failure. There had to be enough success when Ubisoft though would partner with Bidstack to handle in-game advertising in Hyperscape. That much was confirmed in Ubisoft's first major news update since the game's launch, which came September 30th, 2020, where Ubisoft stated that millions had given their game a try. While that's not a steady, consistent player base, it does show that people were at least interested enough to try the game. The update itself was really less of an update and more of Ubisoft coming out and kind of admitting that they were not able to achieve the high expectations we set for ourselves with our full release on console that followed in August. We also know that it didn't meet the high expectations of our players, so we are taking action. To fix such, Ubisoft would be restructuring their team to mimic what Rainbow Six Siege was utilizing with their team, and a plan to release more frequent updates come Season 2. But frequent updates weren't the only issue with Hyperscape. The game had effectively no tutorial, or a very poor one at the very least. It wasn't sufficient enough to teach the complex movement and loot system present in the game, which is bound to turn off new players to the game. Player burnout is then exacerbated by the lack of skill-based matchmaking, or a ranked system at the game's inception, which results in players of all skill levels being pitted up against, well, everybody. When combined with the game's amazing movement and combat system, both of these drawbacks can become even more problematic. What I'm saying is simple. Hyperscape's gaming floor was just too high. A gaming ceiling is usually something that you want to strive for. A game having a high skill ceiling is a good thing, whereas a floor is more of something that's a barrier to entry, because it's more essential to be competitive or viable at the game. So Hyperscape requiring a high skill baseline to play properly was making it even more of a niche BR due to its tendency to drawing on higher skilled players due to its very design. Ubisoft admitted that although they wanted a high skill ceiling for Hyperscape, the data was showing that the floor is also too high. So you don't want both a high skill ceiling and a high floor unless you're trying to make, well, a very niche product. A better tutorial and an elo system early on could have certainly mitigated some of the damage here, but Ubisoft seemingly wasn't giving up yet. With a faltering population, Ubisoft could only admit what was just stated. Hyperscape was too difficult, according to Ubisoft, and they were looking to significantly overhaul the game as well as bring crossplay. Ubisoft tried again with the crossplay, but they didn't achieve the results they expected from the console audience. Ubisoft needed console Hyperscape to succeed because they invested so heavily in it, despite technically starting on the PC first. Changes were going to need to happen though for sure, with memes like 6 Squad Lobby becoming a reality, as lobbies would shrink to sub-dozen players.
Yo, 6 Squad Lobbies! Thanks for the follow, brother. True, dude, true.
Season 2 for Hyperscape would start October 6th, 2020, and would bring much needed updates and changes to the game, including the addition of a ranked mode, a new district, and a new weapon. Season 2 would even add the Floor is Lava game mode, which was a game mode as the name describes, where you had to avoid touching the ground. However, no significant adjustments are really made to the tutorial system, and with population concerns from the start, it's going to be tough for Hyperscape to gain traction. The rank system had been absent for less than 2 months, yet its absence was felt by the player base. Some say the lack of players is due to insufficient advertising or marketing for Hyperscape. Others have described city-wide billboards advertising the game. The issue wasn't Ubisoft investing money on Hyperscape, but rather the user base's enthusiasm in the game. Maybe the game wasn't good enough, or maybe the BR audience wasn't as big as it used to be, or just more set in its ways, not looking to try a new, risky title. Patch 2.3 that came November 13th, 2020 would bring another mode, this time a traditional team deathmatch mode, as well as a series of combat improvements. The most significant change was made to the controller aim assist because Hyperscape was a vertical shooter, using a controller was kind of tricky. Ubisoft's solution was to overturn the hell out of the controller aim assist to make it more competitive with PC players. The problem is it feels totally bizarre because in some cases you struggle to even track a player because of how fast they're moving, then suddenly whenever you lock in with your aim button, you can get a near aimbot level of aim assist. Some have insisted that this existed pre-launch of the game, while others have suggested that this patch in particular made things worse. Whatever the case may be ultimately, controller aim assist was a severe problem in Hyperscape. It made weapons like the Hexfire, a minigun known for being powerful as hell, even more powerful due to easier tracking ability on the controller. All of this was making the game more competitive for controller players perhaps, but not PC players, making Ubisoft's previous hitching to the console market seem all that more real. When the extremes are either a controller player can't compete, or suddenly they have an aimbot, it's easy to see why players were steering clear of Hyperscape.
This is quite insane how strong the aim assist is.
Hyperscape would finally get crossplay December 7th, 2020, but not truly for the PC players, as a console player could join a PC-dominated lobby and play with PC players, but a PC player couldn't really play with PlayStation or Xbox players, and had only PC lobbies. This was going to further hurt Hyperscape on the PC and its population, which had already seemingly taken big blows due to the controller aim assist mentioned previously, and more. And even the crossplay benefiting the console players, the gameplay was still proving to be subpar due to the near aimbot level of aim assist mixed with the game simply not performing that well on controller. And that's a really interesting note to make. Remember originally Hyperscape came out on PC first? The game design seems to imply they were focused first on a PC audience, kind of like Lawbreakers was, right? But with this apparent shift towards the console audience, Hyperscape clearly wasn't designed for controllers, which is why the aim assist wasn't functioning properly. And that was causing issues that seemed irreparable. Just think about it. Who played Quake on console competitively? When have arena shooters besides Halo, which in my opinion barely qualifies compared to the more extreme examples like Quake or Unreal, have been console focused? Like when have they been console focused ever? The PC has always drawn more of a hardcore population. The mouse and keyboard allows for better verticality and mobility when aiming than the gamepad does. A few months after launch, Ubisoft was having to practically pay people to want to play Hyperscape, as they were offering $10 coupons for such. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this in a decade or more. On January 20th, 2021, Hyperscape would get another major update, this time including more aim assist changes, TDM modifications, and a lobby time reduction. The aim assist improvements might have helped, but the well was already poisoned for many gamers. And lobby time reduction, so we can get small 10 people lobbies faster, I guess? The Season 3 update was the largest ever for Hyperscape. Therefore, it had the potential to revive the struggling BR title. It would have a larger map, a bunch of new major landmarks, more landscape diversity, and more zones to visit, each with their unique flair. Finally, the D-Tap, Mammoth, and Komodo weapons would be nerfed as well. The Mammoth and Komodo due to their incredible splash damage and low aim skill requirements. The D-Tap was just insanely powerful for a pistol because it could effectively lock onto a target. These balance issues took effectively half a year to be solved, and that's an awful lot of time to do damage to your player base. The rest of the Season 3 update is rather lean, with clearly a lot of focus being put on the new map and the balance changes. But was it too little, too late for Ubisoft's Quake-like BR? Update 3.1 would focus on balance changes, as well as more improvements for Team Deathmatch. At this point, they seem to be pumping all their resources in TDM because I am assuming they could actually field a match there versus a Battle Royale match, which at this point, they had moved to 60 players. This would prove to be the last update of Hyperscape thus far. At this point, how many developers were even working on Hyperscape at Ubisoft Montreal? With other big projects in full swing, it seemed like Hyperscape was being forgotten. And at this point, could you blame Ubisoft? Seemingly nobody was interested in the title anymore, and it wasn't an issue of pumping more money into it or more content. By the summer of 2021, the news concerning Hyperscape was news of the title not doing well. Hyperscape was boasting a viewer base on Twitch of only 21 viewers. There's no other metrics to really analyze, but when you can't even get a 60-person lobby to start, you know the population is struggling. While Ubisoft has informally shut down Hyperscape, they have all but acknowledged its failure, and then sort of forgotten about it, or at least didn't say anything about it since. The BR hasn't had an update or even developer communication in almost a year. Death is only just on the horizon for Ubisoft's answer to Apex Legends. Before we get to the final deduction portion of the video, where we combine all the clues and evidence obtained thus far and put the case to bed, there's something I wanted to hone in on specifically. That's Ubisoft. I feel like it's quite clear that I've barely mentioned them throughout this video. That's because on Hyperscape, although it was purported to be developed by their main studio, it seemed like it was treated like a red-headed stepchild. Perhaps because the success expected of it needed to be more immediate, or because it was simply an answer to a market trend and not some original project, Hyperscape, besides some goofy hacks, lacks personality. And more importantly, it lacks Ubisoft's personality. Their imprint feels so tiny on the game, besides maybe just the whole Watchdog buildings or something, but that's especially felt community-wise. Contrast this to how For Honor is perceived and involved with their community over the years, and it seems like quite the obvious contrast. The lack of Ubisoft's touch on Hyperscape certainly hurt the game's viability as a title. And that's it, detectives. I feel like we've gathered enough information to crack this case. Hit the music, Tom, and let's put this thing to bed. Aim assist issues plague the game, stemming from consoles primarily. Lack of skill-based matchmaking, rank systems, and a high skill floor alienated or burned out many players. Poor communication and overall support by Ubisoft. A PC shooter that was sold to the console audience. Battle Royale's time in the sun might have dried up. Hyperscape might have had some really cool and unique features not seen or played yet in a Battle Royale, but it was unable to last longer than a single weather season. Although it might seem like Hyperscape was just another Battle Royale with slightly different features, the game plays a lot more like an arena shooter, if anything, than a standard BR, from mobility to combat. And that's kind of wonderful for players like myself, but arena shooters have been fading for a while, and using one as a Battle Royale was a hazardous choice. In theory, combining the failing arena shooter genre with the, though ailing, success of the Battle Royale genre makes sense in practice, but the games draw on very different types of players. Battle Royales have a high skill ceiling, but the sheer degree of randomness makes them unsuitable for competitive play. Trying to create this uber-competitive arena shooter in the skin of a Battle Royale just didn't really make design sense, and in the end, that's the nicest way to say why Hyperscape didn't work. Anytime an arena shooter fails though, I feel a sense of sadness, knowing the genre might not be doomed per se, but it will very likely never reach the heights it once soared from. There's still plenty of BRs to play out there though if you're interested in that, and if not, well, arena shooters are kind of getting a whole new facelift with Halo Infinite's massive recent success. So we're kind of doing good there too. Anyway, that's it for me, guys. Thanks for watching, detectives. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. What is Squarespace, you say? Well, Squarespace is an easy-to-use, powerful, and beautiful online platform where you create your very own website with the help of their templates and service. You can then connect with your audience through members-only content, manage members, send email communications, and get audience feedback, all on Squarespace. You can track things like unique visitors, page views, and even get insight into which are your top traffic sources. You can automatically push your website content to your favorite social media channels too, so people can follow you there as well. Squarespace can even help you set up your e-commerce easily through the platform, allowing you to manage inventory, promote products, and streamline any bookkeeping needs. You can then take your products and ship them globally. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to www.squarespace.com/nerdslayer for my code to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you again, Squarespace, for sponsoring this video.